Hey, welcome back. It's Sarah from Roadworthy. So it's happened. It's raining outside. Said it would happen, and it's here. So bear with me as I probably move around the house trying to find the place to film in. Luckily, my husband and my son are away this afternoon, so I could just plop right here in the middle of the house and not be interrupted, or not feel like I'm interrupting them either, because I'm sure they don't want to hear me talking about books. I actually didn't read a whole ton this week because I was at a knitting retreat. Lindy, you asked to see the hat that I mentioned. I think you could actually see this pretty well. You can see there's 3 different colors of red in there, as well as the 2 colors, a purple and a white in there. This little hat I finished at the retreat. Isn't it cute? Just as a little knitting lesson. This is a Fair Isle technique. This is stranded color work. The cool thing about it is you get these really complicated color work patterns, but there's only ever 2 colors in a single row. So actually, once you learn the stranding technique, these actually aren't that hard to do, but they look darn cool. The other thing is the inside. I don't know if you can see this, but the one yarn is in the front here, and then the other yarn gets carried behind. And so what that kind of does is give you like almost a dual layer of yarn. So extra warmth, and then also if you get sort of water on this side, it's not necessarily going to soak through because you've got that second layer of yarn. So, little knitting 101 there. So that was what I was up to. There were no classes, it's a purely social event, and I realized it was my 15th year going. So that was pretty cool. And I have been going with my friend Jennifer for years and years and years. So my tie-in to that event is I finished while I was at the retreat, On the Way to the End of the World by Adrianne Haroun, which Adrianne is from Port Townsend, Washington. And my retreat was in Port Townsend, Washington. It's always at Fort Worden. Fort Worden is famous for the settings for an officer and a gentleman. So, that was a real tangent. But this book, it's 1963, JFK, as sort of a patriotism boosting effort after the Cuban Missile Crisis, challenged the Marines to be able to walk 50 miles in 24 hours. This was an old requirement that the Marines had originally had, and so JFK challenged the modern day Marines to replicate the feat. And apparently this sort of was like a weird phase that hit America, and people were doing these 50-mile walks themselves. So this book is about an odd collection of people who decide to do the 50-mile walk. You've got a couple Boy Scouts, a priest, the telephone operator, Carolyn, who's a recent widower, Avis, who's like the new girl in town. It almost sounds like a bad joke, like, a Boy Scout, a priest, and a fisherman walk into a bar. It's not a comedy. So you've got this odd collection of people, and as the book goes on, you sort of unearth their motivations for taking on this walk. For many of these characters, patriotism does not necessarily play into, why they're on the walk. So you start to get people's backstories, and then the group stumbles upon the abandoned car of a missing young mother. And it sort of rekindles the mystery of what happened to this mother. And then, things start to happen, and sort of secrets start to come out. These disparate characters start to sort of form this camaraderie. You see, sort of the strengths of different people come out, and sort of evolve, as this walk goes on. I was a little nervous that this was going to turn into like a whodunit kind of a thing. And yes, there is a brief mystery element, with what happened to the young mother. And that is revealed in this book, but the mystery element is actually quite small. This is really more about this collection of people on this walk, and how they come together and what they learn about themselves and one another. Haroon's writing is I really liked her writing. I mean, it's nothing flowery, but I felt like she was really able to sort of convey the atmosphere of Washington, of the Port Townsend area. And again, I don't know if that was enhanced because I was there when I was reading this book. So I did enjoy this book. The second thing that I started is Chronicle in Stone, and I'm gonna kick myself because I forgot to look up how to pronounce his name. I'm guessing it's Ismail Kadare. I'm gonna guess. This book won the inaugural International Man Booker Prize in 2005. And this has been on my TBR for like a million years because Kadare has been nominated for the Nobel Prize 15 times. And he's kind of getting up there. So I don't know. It's got to happen soon, if it's going to happen. Just as a random little aside, I picked this up and started reading it at the retreat, and people will be like, "Oh, what are you reading?" And it sounds so obnoxious to be like, "Oh, I'm reading this the most well-known novel of Albania's, preeminent novelist." I mean, that sounds so obnoxious, but anyway, that's what I had to say. But that's an aside. So what this book is actually about I think this is fairly autobiographical. So this is about a 9-year-old boy's experience of World War II. And it's the history, and it's obviously mirrors real historical events, but it's also, where Kadare grew up, and it sounds like very much based on sort of his experiences. Having a 9-year-old narrator is interesting because he's old enough to sort of wander around on his own with his friends, but not really old enough to quite understand, really all the politics of what's going on. So you get these wonderful descriptions of the people, the town, the places. The writing is, his descriptions are very whimsical and childlike. So like they put in an aerodrome, near the city, and he gets fascinated with the airplanes and just the descriptions of the planes. One of them is called the Bulldog because its nose is shortened. But just like there was a moment where he describes buildings on the street as like, across from one another on the street, like facing off, like who's sturdier, so he just had these just whimsical way of describing places and people in his community, and it felt natural. It didn't feel like he was trying too hard. It didn't feel like an adult trying to have a 9-year-old voice. It really, I actually really thought he was an effective child narrator. He did a lot of describing sort of the neighbors, the aunts and the uncles who were constantly coming through the house, the neighbors coming through the house, how, the opening scene, they're all come together to empty the cistern that's at their house. And, you can just really appreciate what a tight-knit community this is. But yet he also has ways of making class distinctions clear, by, who doesn't join in, who is standing apart, who's a little more nicely dressed than other people, who's using, the community bomb shelter and who's not, so again, those kinds of details that a kid would relate, but wouldn't necessarily pick up on what's the significance of that detail. One of the reasons that I wanted to read this book is because I really didn't know the history of Albania during World War II. And oftentimes when I pick up books like this, that's kind of what I'm looking for, is to be educated a little bit. This book did not do that for me because you have a 9-year-old narrator. So you get, the Greeks came in, the Greeks left, the Italians came in, the Italians left, the Greeks came in, the Greeks left, the Italians came in, the Italians left, the Germans came in, but you don't really know what is going on in the larger world, that powers were changing hands. It's sometimes in a matter of hours. So, again, you just have that 9-year-old's experience of suddenly people walking down the street are wearing a different uniform and have different guns. Not really why. And so it got very confusing at the end because there were different partisan factions in Albania. So you had communists, you had not communists, and so again, it could be very confusing to a reader who doesn't know the history to really follow who these people are. But again, from the perspective of the book, it completely made sense. From a 9-year-old kid's perspective, he doesn't care that these people are communists and those people aren't. He just knows that people are killing one another. And so anyway, I definitely, I'm glad I read this. I definitely appreciated the storytelling in this book. This is very, you know, easily read, very approachable, and originally written in 1971. So, you know, all of that was great. It just didn't give me sort of the historical knowledge that I was looking for. There, in this particular edition, there is an introduction that sort of does give a little bit of the history and the historical context, but you know, that's kind of it. You don't really get it from the book itself. So that's all I finished. Not a whole heck of a lot. That's okay. I'm back home and back in the swing of things. So I'll probably have a little bit more to talk about next week. Okay, that's it for me. Thanks for watching. I hope you all are having a good week, and talk to you soon. All right, see ya.